Do you read the food labels for things that you buy? And if you do read the label, do you really understand it? Well, it's my experience that not a lot of people read the label. And if they do, there are a couple of tricky things that happen on the food label that make it difficult to understand what you're really consuming. So I am going to share Nutrition Label 101 with you and help you understand how to really read the label. And we're going to begin right here with this slideshow, Nutrition Label 101. Do you know what's really in your food? So the first thing that we'll start with is that there are just too many people who are counting calories. Not enough people are actually counting ingredients. The more ingredients there are in something, the more highly processed it is. What we really want to do is stop paying attention to the calories as our primary source of label information and look at what's really in what we're eating. Because it's not just what we eat, it's what's in what we eat. There are so many things that are added to foods, either because they're preservatives or they're processing. They're things that have been processed, or they are ingredients that simply aren't good for us. Unfortunately, those health issues that come from some of these ingredients are not clearly identified on the label. This is where you need to take back control, read the label, understand what's in your cart and from your cart into your pantry at home. So one of the first things to understand is a nutrition label is not just this top part that most of us are used to thinking of. It's comprised of two parts. The first part is the nutrition data, and the bottom piece is the ingredient panel. When it comes to the nutrition data, I find most people look at a couple of things. They look at the calories, which now with the new food label is much bigger, so it's easier to see. And they also tend to look at either fat or sugar, depending on what their personal issue is for health or for, things that they've been told to do by nutrition professionals that they're working with. Some people will look at the protein, but that's pretty much it. One of the things we really need to keep in mind is the fact that the serving size is determined by the manufacturer. Now, the new food label does, in some cases, have slightly more realistic serving sizes, but truthfully, a serving size is still determined by the manufacturer, and you have to remember that what you serve yourself is considered a portion. Let me give you an example. If you take a box of cereal, some cereals can have a serving size that's as little as a half a cup or possibly even a quarter of a cup. I don't know too many people who only eat a half a cup of cereal. If they're going to serve cereal, they generally put it in a bowl and then open the box, shake it over the bowl until it's about that full, however hungry they think they are. That's a portion. When you do that, you then have to go through and recalculate all of these numbers. So for people who sometimes get stuck thinking that they're not eating as much as they potentially are, that's where we have to look at the difference between serving size and portion size. The other thing to remember is that all facts, all the things in this column to the right here, percent daily value, are based on a 2,000 calorie a day diet. If you need less than that, if you need more than that, you need to recalculate what your percentages are, because not every human on the face of the planet requires a 2,000 calorie a day diet. It's also important to know that anything that's in bold on the label, those are mandatory requirements. The government says that when a food producer is creating a product and putting a label on it, they must share these items. Things that are not in bold are not required. Now, one of the things I do want to point out about the new food label that drives me a little crazy is that they do have sugar here. So they list what the total sugars are, including how much is added sugar. I think that's great. I think it's really good for us to know, when they're adding sugar to our food. What I don't like is that they've included a percentage of calories. We don't need sugar. There is no daily requirement for sugar. We could be perfectly healthy without added sugars in our life. Unfortunately, I think this tends to lead people to think that they can have more sugar than perhaps is good for them because they're consuming less than the daily requirement or less than a percentage of the daily requirement. One of the other things we really need to watch out for when we look at the label is to watch out for something that I call funny math. So you'll notice here that it says trans fats equals 0 grams. And this can apply to sugars as well. One of the issues is that just because it says 0 doesn't mean that it actually has 0 in it. And if we look at the ingredients down below, you'll see that we have hydrogenated vegetable oil in this particular. I used peanut butter as an example for this label reading exercise. The issue is they can say it has 0 grams because they're using less than 0.5 grams of trans fats per serving. And remember, the serving size is set by the manufacturer. So for 2 tablespoons of peanut butter, there is less than 0.5 grams per serving. But if let's say you're going to make peanut butter cookies, how many tablespoons are you going to use? There is trans fat in here. If you need a half a cup of peanut butter or even a cup of peanut butter, all of a sudden you could potentially be consuming quite a bit of trans fats because all those slightly less than 0.5% add up. So just be aware that when you see 0 grams, you definitely want to make sure that you are checking that ingredient panel down at the bottom. We really want to make sure that we take the time to read the label, to look at the ingredients, to understand what they are, make sure that there's not too many, make sure that there are not a lot of things in there that we don't want. And so I'd like to share with you my 7 simple rules for healthy grocery shopping. Rule number 1, do you have to look it up? I do not believe you should have to have a biochemical degree in order to be able to understand what's in your food. If you have to look up what an ingredient is, I want to encourage you to set it aside until you've had a chance to do that and decide if it's something you want to eat. Does it have a number? Well, I'm here to tell you there is no such thing as a carrot 12 or an apple 34. Just doesn't exist. When we see numbers on the label, things like red dye number 6, polysorbate 80, those numbers indicate that it is a chemical formulation of some kind. Does it have 4 or more syllables? Well, this is one of those where you kind of got to think about it because pomegranate has 4, and we love pomegranates, and they are delicious. However, there are other things, other chemical names out there that may have more than 4 syllables. And so for those, you want to make sure that you are being mindful. Is it unpronounceable? Well, and again, that's kind of a tricky one. I know when things like quinoa first became popular or acai berry, maybe we didn't know how to pronounce it. But once we learned how to pronounce it and we knew what it was, that let us know that it was something that was delicious, that we liked, that we could eat. When it's unpronounceable, again, I want to encourage you, set it aside and check and make sure that you understand what it really is before you make the decision to put it in your body. Does it end in ATE? Again, that is another really good time to sort of stop and just think, to be mindful, because things like sorbates, galates, nitrates, those all end in ATE, and you do not want to EAT them. However, going back to our example of pomegranate ends in ATE, and they're delicious and we love them. So just be mindful of what that ingredient is or what that item is if it ends in ATE. Rule number 6, is it enriched? Now, there's a big difference between enriched and fortified. Enriched is where they strip out a bunch of nutrients and then they put some of them back. The ones that they put back typically tend to be a few of the B vitamins, possibly some iron, possibly some calcium, depending on what it is. But the other ingredients that they stripped out are not being put back. And they also are using chemical analogs for those B vitamins and other things. Typically, you tend to see the words enriched on grain-based products, breads, crackers, pasta, that kind of thing. But you definitely don't want to eat things that are enriched because it's been stripped of nutrition. Fortified, on the other hand, is where they take something and add it to another food that it doesn't belong in. The biggest example I see at the grocery store is when they have calcium in orange juice. Somebody decided that perhaps people were not getting enough calcium, and if they added it to orange juice, then people could drink the juice and get the calcium. Not a great choice. First of all, it's not a good source of calcium. Second of all, when we're drinking juice, we're getting a lot of sugar. So fortified and enriched are definitely two things that you want to watch out for. Although enriched isn't always identified on the back of the label, that tends to be a front of label thing. So we definitely want to watch out for the words enriched on the bottom of the food label in the ingredient panel. And if you think something's fortified, that they've added something else to it, you may want to consider if you really want to eat it, but 9 times out of 10, you don't want it. And then the last one is it all letters and not words? This is where you look at the very bottom of the ingredient panel and it says things like TBHQ, BHA, EDTA. When you see all capital letters, that tells you that that is an abbreviation for a longer chemical name. For example, BHA stands for butylated hydroxyanisole. And that's a preservative, and we don't want it in our food. So these are the 7 simple rules for healthy grocery shopping. If you follow these, you will get rid of the vast majority of things that you don't want in your food, and it'll help you make healthier choices at the grocery store. One of the other things that you can do to learn more about this topic is to buy a copy of my book, The Pantry Principle: How to Read the Label and Understand What's Really in Your Food. In this book, I break it down for you so that you understand the different areas of foods that you're going to buy at the grocery store, whether it's additives, colors, sugars, fats, and more. I even share some really delicious recipes in the book so that you've got a good start to begin adding foods and recipes that don't have negative ingredients in them. So I'm Mira Dessy. I am the ingredient guru, and I encourage you to eat a real whole food diet and choose a healthy lifestyle. Thank you so much for watching this video. I would encourage you to share it with friends, click and like it down below, and I will be back with more videos later. So be sure to subscribe by clicking that bell. Thanks so much for joining me. Take care. Bye.